Hello, I'm Digital Soul,
Hey, it's your boy Big Groove, and we are the
the
Purple
Purple
Brothas.
Brothas.
Hey, this week we have a very, very special guest.
He's a platinum selling artist and also a Grammy nominated artist as well. And also, he goes by one name as well, just like who our conversation will be about Prince. He is a legendary saxophonist and flutist, Najee.
Najee in the building. Oh man, this man needs no introduction. Somebody that I follow over 35 plus years in the music business, a jazz legend. Everybody, please welcome Najee. Najee, thank you, bro.
Thank you, man. I'm trying to look around, look at who's in here. Jazz legend. I'll see something I don't see. I don't know.
Yes, we really appreciate you spending
thank
time
you.
out of your schedule for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Yes,
it as
sir.
well.
So let's get into it, sir.
Okay.
Tell us about your humble beginnings, how you got started in the business.
Sure. Well, I'm from New York City, born and raised, born in Manhattan, and then ultimately at the age of 11, we moved to Queens, Jamaica, Queens, New York. And I know you all heard that song, Funker for Jamaica.
Oh yeah.
Which is really about my neighborhood. And, so I grew up in a neighborhood where not too far from where I live, people like Count Basie had homes, James Brown, John Coltrane at one time, Miles Davis. And so the community at the time really had a lot of strong musical influences at the time. A lot of the musicians went on to do great things, Tom Brown being one of them. Some of the rap crew, of course, Run DMC, LL Cool J, and so many others from the area. So I was really a part of the crew. Marcus Miller, great bass player. We grew up together. Omar Hakim, the world drummer, who played with Sting and David Bowie and all those people. So that's really what I started in the local bands in Queens, and in the when I left high school in the late 70s, my first world tour was touring for the USO, touring around the world doing military bases with a band called Area Code. And then I ultimately decided to quit the band and go on to college, and I did. I played a short stint for a while with the legendary singer Benny King. And then I went to Bronx Community College for a year. Then I went up to New England Conservatory, studied there until I couldn't afford to go anymore. And then, in 1983, I came back home to New York City. And fortunately, I was doing a lot of session work along with my brother Fareed, record dates back then. And one day, I'm playing in a club, and in comes Shaka Khan's musical director, hears me playing on a traditional jazz set. And she calls me the next day, asked me to audition for Shaka's band. And we went out on the Ain't Nobody tour. So we did that for about a year. And then after that, I signed my first record deal in '86, which we were just talking about, which produced Najee's Theme, which was really a collection of demos just done.
Wow.
And they put it out, and within 6 to 7 months, we had a gold record, my very first gold album,
So you're saying that whole album was just demos?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like a demo budget, Capitol, EMI Records at the time wasn't, I didn't think they really had any serious plans for me. But because of the manager I had, who was Melba Moore's husband at the time, they were just showing me gratis because he had big acts like Freddie Jackson, multi-platinum selling acts at the time, and Melissa Morgan and others. And so when he told them he wanted to sign a jazz artist, they were like, okay, go ahead and sign a jazz artist, whatever you want to do. So I just happened to be the guy they chose. And, nobody saw the album doing as well as it did when it came out. It just really clicked, and it's been history ever since. So.
Yeah. And may I interject, man, that became the #1 contemporary jazz album.
Yes.
Yeah, that is amazing. To all our
13 weeks
that are watching, that's wow.
Just when I heard Najee's theme, it floored me. But when I heard the other songs, like "Bet You Don't Know What's Going On,"
right? Yeah.
What?
They became anthems for me, So
yeah, there's some beautiful music. It's like when you hear that today, and that was '86, man. That you can really like step to those songs still.
Oh yeah. We love. Well, I tell you, I can't play anywhere. Excuse me. I can't play anywhere around the world unless I play those songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it real. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Indeed, a classic. And one thing I must say, as Big Rube had mentioned about the sound of the album, one thing I noticed about all of your music is, like as we talked before, I have a lot of your stuff. It seems like with every album, they all stuck to what you began with. You know, some jazz,
Yeah.
there's some jazz musicians, per se, Herbie Hancock, long career. He dipped and dived into hip hop a little bit, and went
Yeah.
traditional. Other artists like Ramsey Lewis have done the same. But with you, your sound, it always reminds me of chill,
Oh,
relaxation.
okay. That's
Yeah,
nice to know.
just
Thank
at
you.
ease, and all the albums have the same feel. And what it does to me, it
Yeah.
kind of it reminds me of peace, and it kind of lets me know. Oh, I don't correct me if I'm wrong. What kind of person you are? Because usually a person
Oh
plays
man.
what they are, and I've always got that vibe from each and every one of your albums.
Yeah, I wish I could step out. I hear that a lot, and I wonder, well, I don't think like that.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
Got a
it's
brother
just,
from New York, right?
every saxophone player, I'll limit it to saxophone players, or even people, when you listen to vocalists, I mean, you recognize Nancy Wilson as one of our great American treasures as an artist, or Sarah Vaughan, and then you listen to Patti LaBelle, and then people say, well, who is better? There's nobody better. I mean, it's two different personalities, So
Right.
I think I've just been blessed with the ability to have my own personality. It ultimately grew to that.
Yeah.
And really it was because, every time I tried to play like John Coltrane, I still sounded like Najee playing John Coltrane. When I tried to play like Grover, I sounded like Najee playing Grover. So,
Yeah.
it ended up being a blessing,
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So, Najee, can you kind of tell me about your thoughts on contemporary jazz then, as opposed to like right now, the feeling that you have with it?
Well, now they've got this term smooth jazz. They call it smooth jazz, which came popular in the 90s, the brand, which was started by a woman, I can't think of her last name, named Denise out of Chicago. She worked for one of the major radio stations there. And but before that, when I came out, we know back in the late 70s, people like Grover Washington Jr., Ronnie Laws, Hubert Laws, the whole Laws family, Joe Sample and the Crusaders, David Samuel, those people really changed. George Benson, they changed the culture of jazz as we understood it, in the late 70s. I kind of came along as the next generation in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. I was a part of that generation. And at that time, the industry had gone through a slump. And as you remember, when Michael Jackson came out with Thriller, there was this infused money into the record industry. And I was one of the artists I think benefited from that, while labels were still doing the big promotions and all that stuff. So, when I became popular, they had to create a new category in the Billboard magazine because I was competing against the jazz artists. And then you had this guy like me they considered jazz. However, I was selling thousands of units, 10 to 12,000 units a week. So, they had to, we can't disrespect the guys on the jazz side, so they created this new category called contemporary jazz. And ultimately that became smooth jazz. So, that's how that whole thing developed, but it's changed quite a bit, so.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys were like, I remember that period. There was like Pieces of a Dream,
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Marcus Miller.
That's right.
Yeah, there was a few things going on around that early 80s period that was kind of, you can see it growing. Gerald Albright, all of those cats were coming
Right.
in.
Exactly.
And you can see it brewing. And then right by the time the late 80s and 90s took off, yeah, like Norman Brown and other cats that were coming in.
Sure.
It just took a whole nother level.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, you named some great, and then Norman Brown is great on that guitar, man.
That he is.
He's a bad boy. He's kind of like he come from that George Benson type of.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he admits that George was a big influence. As George was a big influence of many guys out there now.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So Najee, why the sax and why the flute? What, as a child or as a teenager, what happened to where you connected with those instruments, and then you just that was it?
Man, well, I was influenced by the sound of the saxophone through my mother as a little kid. I mean, I don't know if y'all went through the same thing. You're a little younger than me, but when I was a kid, every Saturday we had to clean the house, and my mother would always play records with saxophone players, Mongo Santa Maria, Miles Davis with George Coleman, Cannonball. I mean, she just played all this stuff. Anyway, as a kid, I would always run around, and I bent up a curtain rod at one point and pretended I was a saxophone player because I loved the sound of the instrument. And then when I got to junior high school, I got to play clarinet first, because all the saxophone chairs were taken. And but my teacher said, well, go ahead and learn the clarinet because you'll switch saxophone. Well, anyway, I also had a very strong interest in aviation. So my plan was to go to high school to become a pilot to aviation high school in New York. Yeah. Wow. And at the time, there was a school that was started in my neighborhood that Russell Simmons and I went to because we were classmates until he got kicked out one day for punching a teacher in the face. But true story. But but anyway, I went to August Martin High School, which was in Jamaica, Queens, New York, to become a pilot, but we had a very strong music department. And at the age of 15, I took my very first solo in front of an audience in the school auditorium, and right after that, all the girls knew my name, so I had a quick career change. That's a true story.
That did it. That's still the deal, right?
All the girls are trying to get with a brother, you know what I'm saying? So there you go.
Hey, that'll do it every time, right?
All that, But in all seriousness, after that, I also joined the Jazzmobile program in New York under Billy Taylor, the late Dr. Billy Taylor, who, recruited people like Jimmy Heath and Ernie Wilkins and Frank Foster, big names in the industry, in the jazz industry, who took the time on Saturdays when they weren't traveling to teach, people like myself, inner city kids who really didn't have any money, but for $5 a year, a federal program that allowed us to go to these workshops on Saturdays and develop, and learn the secrets and the science of jazz, I'll call it, and so that's how it all started for me.
Wow, and that's just been it ever since, huh?
Yeah, ever since, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
It is. So do you think that, when it comes to musicianship and just playing instruments, as far as it being taught, it seems like it's been on a decline. It's like, even for me, when I was in school, in my high school, me and John, we went to high school together. And coming off playing,
and where you guys from? Where you guys from?
Los Angeles.
Oh, LA. Okay.
Yeah, we're LA kids.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Well,
I lived out there for almost 10 years. I know it well. So.
Oh yeah. We're 30 years strong, man. We went to the same high school. We went to a parochial school in the heart of Watts.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Nice. They saw his hat.
All right. Watts brothers. All right.
Yes. So. So do you feel that, when it comes to people learning to play instruments, you think it's on a decline now?
I think it has been for some while, simply because the educational system is not there anymore. As a matter of fact, I heard one person kind of sum it up. The rise of rap music was a result of just not the support, and saying that's a good thing, but the lack of support educationally, has made it decline. And playing an instrument really takes you having the focus and the interest to want to do it.
Right.
If your parents encourage you and you naturally get to it, that's it. But back when I was growing up, if you didn't own an instrument, you had access to having a free instrument to take home to practice and that kind of thing. So so you're absolutely right in that level.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because when we came up, we had band as an elective. Nowadays you don't have it, and then I was one of the students who got to take my tenor saxophone home in 7th grade and big baritone saxophone in 8th grade. You know what I mean? But when we got to high school, it was like they didn't have it. So what do? You're either gonna pay for it, or sometimes families can't afford those lessons. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. But you're absolutely right. You know, I mean, we're sad to see, because I think, you know, jazz is one of the American heritage treasures that we're letting go in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of great players who are still playing and mentoring and you know, all that kind of stuff. So
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yes.
So in the middle of your growing up, and being attached to the saxophone and the flute, who were some of the people that you kind of looked to or were inspired by, as far as the
sure.
albums back at that time?
Yeah, well, you know, I was inspired, number one, by a bunch of people in my neighborhood. We had
Oh
great
wow.
players, you know. Yeah, I mean, there were guys who played the instrument, and they played it well, and they were accessible to hear in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, in clubs or in parks and stuff like that. As well as my high school teacher. What happened, I had two high school teachers that were very proficient in the instrument. As a matter of fact, I didn't understand why they were teaching school when they played so well, you know, but I understand they had to make a living now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also on record, I would have to say people like Joe Henderson,
Oh yeah.
you know, John Coltrane, George Coleman, for
Oh,
me.
you're talking about
Grover
some old,
eventually,
yeah, talking about
Grover
some
became the
OG.
first contemporary sound that I was
Yeah.
drawn to, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
Mr. Magic himself.
oh yeah, you know, and you know, years later, I had the opportunity to get to know him, and actually he came and sat in with me, and it was a couple of times I opened shows for him.
Very cool.
You know, so it was really like to be this guy out of New York, kid out of New York. Now here I am, all with my mentors, Miles Davis, Grover Washington, and all these people, and be on the same stage as a peer, you know, was kind of weird, you know. So,
Right.
but
So you met Miles before you passed too?
yeah, I did. We actually
What was
did.
that like?
He was a very interesting man. You know, he
I
wasn't
bet.
very. Yeah,
Yeah.
Miles was not a social butterfly. I mean, he was not a.
Yeah.
You couldn't read him very well, you know. So,
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah.
So now we want to transition. You know, the Purple Brothas is all about the music of
Yeah.
Prince. Like me and Digital Soul here, John. We've loved his music since we were kids.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about doing a review for an album. John brought it up and we were talking about the Rainbow Children. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, because I haven't heard that in a long time. I said, I dig that. I dig that. And so we found out that you played on it. I was like, what?
Yeah. That played all the saxophone on that whole album. Yeah.
And then I remember seeing you, I believe it was you when he was on The Tonight Show.
Yes.
He played the Ballad of Dorothy Parker. He was on the flute.
That's right. Yeah, I sure did. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, because that was one of the coldest songs on the Sign of the Times album. And then to hear it like the jazz version of that, I was like,
Sure.
oh.
Yeah.
And to have you, brother, on it playing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it was an honor, man. My association with Prince was kind of an awkward one, you know, how it came about. I think it was in the late 90s. I was opening for Shaka, and we were playing the Greek Theater. And somebody said to me after I got off stage, said, "Hey, man, did you see Prince?" I said, "No." He said, "He was standing right there checking you out, man." I'm like, "Really, word?" And I said, "Well, where is he?" You know, and he had disappeared. You know, he was known for that. And so fast forward like maybe 3 years later, I get an invitation in New York to come to his concert at Madison Square Garden. And because we had the same attorney, Londell McMillan, out of New York City. So Londell sent word for me to come to the concert. There were tickets. I sat right next to Maxwell in the concert. The concert was amazing. And then he sent word that he wanted me to join him at the after party that he was having in New York City. So, of course, I went. I brought my flute. And, you know, Prince, he taped everything.
Absolutely.
Videotaped everything. So my friend Dougie Fresh was on the tour with Prince at the time. And so Dougie, you know, we go and I do this thing, and then about maybe 2 months later, Dougie calls me up and he goes, yo, the artist, he's looking for you. I'm like, what do you mean looking for me? He said, yo, he was on the tour bus, man. We was checking you out playing that flute, man. He said, yo, that's dope. How can I get in touch with him? And so I told him I'll get in touch with him for you, you know? And so anyway, I get a call. He says, I get a call, and this guy says it's on the phone. I was living in LA at the time. This guy says, Najee, I have the artist wanting to speak to you. I said, okay. He said, but he's going to call you back. Click, hung up the phone, just like that.
Wow.
Some weird stuff, man. So about maybe 5 minutes later, the guy gets on, Najee, I have the artist on the line. I'm like, man, now my anticipation starting to build up, because, And so anyway, Prince gets on the phone. He says, hey, man, when you and I getting together? I'm like, I don't know when we getting together. He says, what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm at home. He says, why don't you come out to Minneapolis? I said, when would you like me to come? He says, why don't you come out right now? I'm like, man, I can't come out right now. I'm at home. He says, well, when can you come out? I said, about maybe the next week early. He said, okay, I have somebody call you back. All right. Click, hangs up the phone. I'm like, what the heck just happened? Well, maybe 10 minutes later, or about an hour later, I get a call from a travel agent, and they book my brother and I. We come out there. And I get to Paisley Park, and he takes us out to clubs. We hang out, man. We just watch people dance. And then like 2 o'clock in the morning, we come back to Paisley Park, and we just do jam sessions for like a week. Man,
Yeah.
just at 2 from 2 to 4 in the morning every night. And then finally he comes to me, he says, "Man, will you come to the studio with me tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool." And that's when we recorded the Rainbow Children. Now,
so you had no clue that you were even going to record an album. It all just kind of fell in place.
I think he was just bringing me into his environment to see if I fit, if he liked me. I don't know. I guess that's really what it is. It just so happened that he and I and my brother, we clicked. He loved my brother because, Prince is a real intellectual. I mean, he loves my brother's that type of mind. So they would always get into their little stuff and talk and debate. And, at the end of the conversation, it was always love and hugs. I mean, Prince didn't hug nobody, but you know what I mean. And that's how the whole thing started, man. And then so we go in the studio, and pretty much, man, the album was pretty much conceived by him all the way. I mean, really, he could have got anybody to play the stuff I played other than the solos, because the parts were already in his head. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he was kind of going, in my opinion, I think he was going for that Marvin Gaye sound meets Miles Davis Bitches Brew type of vibe, and that's what it resulted in. Because for the real Prince fans, if you were used to all the stuff he's done in the past, this was not that record. It was total departure.
Oh,
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And that was the main reason why I brought up to my partner why I wanted to talk about this album, because I myself followed his career basically from the beginning. As a child, I did not miss a beat with any record, 12-inch, single, or anything. So when this album came about, of course I got it. Hadn't heard anything off of it other than I think The Work. I think was that was a single, and bought the album and everything. And at that time, I didn't really give it a chance because I knew about the message that was going on, with the lyrics and so forth. I said, okay, this is different. But it's one of those things that, man, with this record now, years later, it's gotten better and better and better as far as instrumentation, the sound of it. And
yes, sir.
For me, it reminds me of on a level with Marvin Gaye's "Hear My Dear."
Right.
Right. Sometimes, taking a very, awkward, maybe topic, divorce, religion, and just making a whole album about that subject. Like you said, it was something that was ahead of its time.
Yeah, I thought so. Because I remember a few times just playing the material in public, on stage, and I could tell the audience they were being educated. Like for them, this was, I mean, he had to bring them along with it. They didn't really get it. I mean, they accepted anything Prince did because Prince, he was just a brilliant musician and person, but they were there to hear all the old stuff, so you always have a portion of the show that was that. But I remember the album took a little minute for people to really grasp and understand.
Yeah, because we're coming from, I wanted to hear, I like the funk from Prince.
Right.
When he kind of went the old way, when he went to the unpronounceable symbol, his music started to change in the 90s, and it progressed after the album he did under Clive Davis. I think it was Rave under to George.
Yeah, that's right.
After that, and then when I saw the commercials about Rainbow Children, I said, "What is Prince? What is this?" you know.
Right.
But since it was Prince, I bought it, and then I might have gave it one listen, honestly,
Right.
back then. But I cling to Muse to the Pharaoh.
Right. Right.
That was
Yeah. I
that
remember
was
that.
my joint.
Yeah, that was
But
me playing flute on all that. I remember that.
see, that's why they.
Yeah.
But now that we're older, we have a more of an appreciation for the music and what it embodied. But when you're
Sure.
younger, you really don't. He, like you said, he was ahead of his time, and now we
Yeah.
understand as adults. We really understand the concept of what the Rainbow Children's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man. I mean, I remember being in the studio with him and just, before we went in, I think we went in 2 days later because I remember the day before he had a cassette player and his guitar and he would play tracks and then he would tell me what he wanted to hear on there. And I had to kind of sit there and write it out because he didn't write music. He didn't read. I mean, he wrote music, but he didn't read it, so I would have to write out the parts because, he just heard things differently, man. I mean, and for me to try to remember that in the session would have been a nightmare for me. So,
Right.
he would sit there with his guitar and sing me the parts and play them, and while we're listening to the track, and I'm sitting there scribing it out on music paper, And it was a real fascinating process for me. He really was amazing, to work
So
with.
on any of those tracks, did he at any point let you just kind of free form on any of those tracks? Did he just say, go ahead and do what you feel, or was everything
Yeah,
kind of structured?
he would do things like he would let me play, and then he would hear something I would do, and he would say, "Now I need you to do that. I'm going to
Okay.
double it, or I'm going to chorus it, or whatever." He would cherry pick parts out. There was a whole lot of stuff on those tracks that obviously didn't make the
Right.
record because there was points where he would just let me go for it, and then to me he would pick some of the weirdest things I probably wouldn't have chosen. But so it was definitely for me an unorthodox approach, but I couldn't question his genius.
Yeah,
Couldn't
absolutely.
do it. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things about, like I said, being even like if you look at the past albums, like Around the World in a Day, coming right after Purple Rain,
Yeah.
right at
Right.
360. I mean, yeah, he has different phases of his career where he
Yeah.
just kind of took two or three steps forward, and we were still trying to catch up. And then
Uh-huh.
years later, it's like, oh, that album is is the bomb, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, just like a lot of artists, Stevie Wonder is one of those
Yeah.
cats too.
Stevie's definitely like that. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they kind of think 2 or 3 steps ahead of us, and it takes us a little bit of time to catch up to them.
Get along. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true. That is
yeah.
so true.
I know that you mentioned like the conversations at that time, because I know at
Mhm.
that time, between 2000 and 2003,
Yeah.
he of course got into Jehovah's Witness, and
Right.
from what I know in that period, he was very, very strong at encouraging people about getting ownership and the media outlets and things like that,
Yes,
the
sir.
internet. And he was
Mhm.
very, very stern on that. And I remember reading that he had a lot of meetings at Paisley Park for the
He did.
album, and
Yes.
chats with different people, and did Q&As. Was there anything during that time period when he was expressing those ownership thoughts or anything that you may have walked away with or learned that you didn't know before?
Oh yeah. You know what? We spent a lot of time talking about that stuff because at the
Right.
time, my relationship with Capitol EMI Records came to an end, and it was actually his attorney that was through Clarence Avon, his attorney Londell McMillan, that got him out of the deal with Warner Brothers. Got me out of the same deal,
Oh,
and
wow.
my departure. I'll call it a divorce settlement, as all artists go through with labels. They wanted $1 million for me. I didn't have $1 million to give them. And by the time it was all said and done, I signed a contract release for $25,000 to give to my ex-manager, and I walked away. But the beautiful thing was I never got a bill for it,
Wow.
because I think Prince, because Londell was working under Prince at the time.
You took care.
When Londell called me up and said, "Hey man, you got 25 grand?" I'm like, "I owe you 25 grand." I was like, he said, "Nah, man, I'm gonna fax you over this release. You sign it, and then make the check out to your ex-manager, and you're done."
Wow.
It's like that was it. And I said, "Well, what I owe you?" He said, "Don't worry about it." And that was it.
Wow.
So at the time, I left EMI, and Prince had offered me the opportunity to record with him, and we backed away from that because unfortunately we had the history of Shaka, what happened with him and her, and I just didn't want to get in that kind of relationship with him because he was into like, we don't do contracts, you know, we just do the music, you know. So I kind of shied away from that. But we would always have these conversations about owning your own masters, and I tell you, that after that point, I did one album with Universal Music Group, Verve Records, and after that, ever since then, all the material I do is owned by myself and my brother company. Yeah. So, and I have to say, I have to credit him with that. Yeah. I know I gave you a long story, but
no,
you know, with Prince, there's always a backstory. You know. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here for. We're here to get the backstories on, you know,
yes,
those times and so forth, and you know, hear your voice. So we thank you for that.
yeah, yes, sir. Yes,
sir. So when you recorded like your next album after Najee's Theme, no, I'm going back, but one of my other joints that I love was Day by Day.
yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Now, was that under the EMI umbrella, or was that on the?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, at that time, EMI Records, as you know, they're a British company. They actually bought a large stake in Capitol Records there in LA, and so my album went through a system of the Capitol music chain, depending on what part of the world they were promoting. Blue Note owned me for a while. You know, they and Manhattan Records, which was part of the Blue Note. Capital EMI subsidiaries, you know, so they had a whole subsidiary of different labels, and I was in that whole system, you know. So Day by Day was under that as well. And when Najee's Theme came out, nobody expected it to do what it did. You know, I mean, it went gold in like 7 months, and then ultimately became a platinum record. And then when Day by Day, it did the same thing. I don't know if you can see behind me. There's a wall here where 4 of those albums under that record there.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see it, but that plaque over there, all that is the awards there. Najee's Theme, the very first gold album, is right there.
Okay.
But yeah, so you know, I'm nothing like Paisley Park. Nothing like Paisley Park when you walk in, the whole walls are just you get the long hallway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was under there as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you toured, you went on the One Night Alone tour?
Yes.
And
yes. What happened was after we did the record, one day we were just in we were just doing one of those jam sessions, and I went into the kitchen to just get some tea or something, and then he comes in. He says, "Hey man, can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah, man." He says, "I got a problem." I was like, "Well, what do you mean you got a problem?" I'm thinking it's about my playing or something. He says, I would like you to join the MPG. I'm like, hey, that ain't a problem. I would love to. He says, I got a tour, you know. Well, what's the problem in that? He says, only problem is I don't know what to pay you. And I said, well, man, I don't know what to charge you, you know. he says, he does the ultimate pimp thing, you know. He goes, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know how to answer. He says, you need a house? I'm like, no, man, I don't need a house. Because, you know, he would do that. He would buy artists' homes in Minneapolis, like Larry Graham, you know.
Yeah.
And some of the band at the time, they all had homes that he had purchased for them, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, no, man, I don't need a house, and I can't move to Minneapolis. You know, I'm good. And then we never talked money, you know, after that. And so he said, I got this 2-week tour. Now, that ended up being a 3-year thing, you know. But I went out, did the tour, and I mean, I would come back home to LA, and it would just be these chicks, man. I mean, just sitting in my mailbox, you know. So, yeah.
You can't argue with that, right?
I was with it. I mean, you know, hey, he respected my time. He respected my status. You know, I have nothing bad to say about
him. Yeah, absolutely. So when going in the studio to do the Rainbow Children, what were the tracks that you considered that you maybe had the most fun recording that you remember?
Gosh, if I can remember them, you know, I can't say you know, for me, in my mindset as an artist, it was like, I'm there to do what the producer needs. So, you know, I didn't really go in thinking like, be Najee here, you know, even though that's what he wanted. He wanted my name, he wanted my vibe, but I didn't go with that mindset. So I didn't go with this thing like, okay, I like this song better than the other. I was really going in just to see what he wanted as a producer, because we were just getting to know each other as artists, you know.
Yeah.
and that what came out of it is what came out of it, I think. But I always loved playing on the funk stuff, man. I mean, there was a song called North Side, you know, that he recorded. I love that track, you know, because it was funky, it was fun to play on, you know, that kind of thing. And he just let me rip through the whole thing, you know. And I just recently downloaded it on iTunes. I think it was on the Rainbow Children record.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, the North Side, and he took the solo and he reharmonized it with a harmonizer, so he got me playing, but it's all in harmony, you know, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
So you know, he was always somebody that constantly like played, and he had like after shows. Did you deal with those after shows after you went
All the time,
did the set?
all the
Now,
time, until I just was too tired to do some of them. I would just disappear after the first. You know, but you know, Prince, I gotta be honest with you, man. I never saw him sleep. I never saw him doze off. I never saw him do that. I mean, we would go to sound check at 4 p.m, for example. You know, play the sound check, 8 o'clock. The show starts. Show is over between 11:30. Then you go back and shower. You come to the after party at around 2 a.m., 2:30 in the morning. You play, you have fun. Then sometimes he'd want you to come back to his suite to watch everything we just did all night long. Wow. And man, I'd be on his couch like sleep, and he'd be like, "Yo, Najee, look what you played here, man!" Like, I wake up and I'm like, "Oh yeah, man, that was dope." I was, and then like 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, we're preparing to leave to go to the next city, flying or wherever we were going. And then they would just keep going like that. So for like, man, maybe I don't know, maybe 6 weeks of that, man, I would come home, and you know, my wife would be like, "Are you okay?" You know, because I would sleep for 2 weeks, man. I never saw the guy sleep. You know, he would just keep going and going and going. You know, we used to joke. We used to say, "Man, he must be a bat." We always had this image that he was in a room hung upside down like a vampire in a dark place. You know?
Was there any times when he asked you to play that you said no, maybe on the after show?
I would never say no. I just wouldn't show up, you know, because it really wasn't an obligation. It was just, you know, I was tired. I didn't want to hang out, you know. But no, I would never say no to him, you know. Okay. I mean, the one time I know I said no to him was one time we were performing in this at one of the after shows, and the crowd was all in front. He said, "Man, go jump out there, man. Go wave." You know how you wave across the crowd, jump in the crowd, then they just carry across.
Yeah.
I was like, "Man, I ain't doing that. I got my horn. What if they move apart and, you know, I'll just fall right through it?" He said, "Go do it, man. Go do it, man. I'll get you a new horn." I'm like, "No, man, I'm good. I ain't doing it. I can't do it." You know?
So you were on 3 tours with him, which was the Hit and Run tour, the Celebration tour, and then also the One Night Alone tour.
Yes.
So once the One Night Alone tour ended, what happened as far as you deciding, okay, I'm going to go back to my career and regroup?
Well, I had signed the deal I told you about with Universal, with Verve Records. Okay. Actually, thanks to Clarence Avant. So I signed a deal with them, and it was, yeah, you know, brother Clarence, right? Yeah, he got me a deal with that label, and I had to go do the record. I was contracted, and so after I think he was about to go do Jay Leno for the second time around that time, and we had played a few dates all around the country, and I came to him. I said, "Listen, man, I got to leave. You know, blah 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 blah." But he was cool because he had Maceo, you know, he had Candy Dolfer, right. You know, he had Greg Boyer, you know, on trombone. So it wasn't like, you know, I was really going to be missed other than just the camaraderie, you know, of just having me around, you know.
Okay. So after that, you just decided to just go ahead and just restart your career. And
yeah. Well, I mean, it was going all along because I would leave when I needed to do concert dates and things like that. He gave me no problems in that area at all.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, he was really cool about that. So
very cool.
So can you tell us about what you got going on currently, your latest music?
Yeah, well, my current album is called Center of the Heart. It's features Kenny Lattimore on one song, one R&B track that we did very well with. We released the first two. Well, we released 2 singles, one at R&B and one at smooth jazz. It's been doing very well, you know. Now, of course, we had to slow down due to the virus thing going on. We had to cut all our concert dates for the last 3 months, you know, and been rescheduled. But that's been doing very well, you know. It's been doing very well.
I have a question about that, Najee, because like I heard the album. I heard you had a remake of something on there about
Yeah,
Maxwell,
yeah.
which is
Maxwell, yeah.
really cool. I don't know, Big Ruby, if he had a chance to check it out or not. So
No,
one of the questions I do have, because every album you have a couple of remakes. You know, Sweet
Yeah.
Love.
Sure.
You know, all the things your band won't do. You
Wow.
just
Yeah, you
you
taking me
did
back.
Alfie. Yeah, you just even did Alfie. So, but every time I hear those remakes, they don't sound like remakes. You make them your own. They sound like they're your songs. How do you decide and pick and choose which remake you're going to do? And then,
Well, I got to be honest. Sometimes I know they're going to be good when I do them. Sometimes they're experiments, and then how it ends up to be is how it ends up to be. In the case of What Your Man Won't Do, I was never really satisfied with that performance, but I love the song. I like with Joe as an artist. But it came out the way it came out, and if I had a remake, I would do it over differently. But people love it live, who've heard it. Yeah, when we do it live, it's great. In the case of like a song like Alfie, that's just a song I was always in love with. My mother, as a kid, I remember her playing that, all the time, the Dionne Warwick version. And the opportunity came on this record. I said, I'm going to do something a little orchestral with the flute. There've been tons of people who've done the song, as you know. But I went in a different direction. I might be the only one that's ever done it on flute that we know about, so yeah, and do a totally different direction. Yeah.
When you do your songwriting, because one thing I noticed too about your music, there's a lot of you use a lot of intricate minor chords and things like that in your production as far as the songs. When you write your songs, what do you start with? Do you start with drums, bass? What kind of produces the song for you? What's the starting process for you?
I've never been the kind of guy that creates a melody and then writes the song. For me, it's always been like I sit at a keyboard and do it, because I played keyboards well enough. In college, I had to study harmony and theory and all that stuff. So I learned to play well enough to be able to compose songs ever since high school. And so generally, I'm a harmonic writer first, and then I come up with the melodies. There's a song I wrote for my son many years ago called Noah's Ark, where I played all the instruments on there, Of course, I would never do that again, But that all came from the keyboards first, and it ended up being one of my biggest songs ever.
So with me and Big Rube, what we usually do at the end of our show, when we talk about the Prince albums, we usually ask each other at the end of the show, what are the 3 favorite Prince songs off the album that we discussed? So I'm gonna without the, we did a little discussion about the album, but I won't put you on the spot. What are your 3 favorite Prince songs, not particularly on this album, but as a whole? Do you have 3 that you think you can name?
Oh gosh, yeah, there's quite a few. Gosh, you know what? I wish I had my playlist here. I could take it, but now my mind is going blank.
Right.
But you know what, man? I mean, I still like DMSR. And not so much the lyric content. I just love the funk.
Wow.
When we were playing live, man, I always loved playing that song. He would give me a little run on there,
Yeah.
And he would always yell, Najee, I go out and play. But I'll tell you a funny story about that song. One time we were in sound check and we were, just fooling around on it. And he was sitting out in the theater, just sitting out in the audience in the arena. And, he had on his glasses, he had on his coat, his fur mink. And he had the cane, had the real pimp look. And he's just sitting there just staring at us, right? And then all of a sudden, man, he just jumps up. Stop. Y'all stop playing that song. I'm like, everybody's looking around like, what's wrong? He's like, y'all ain't dressed right. Don't play it. I was like, oh. Man, I was laughing so hard, but he was serious as a heart attack. He was like, yo, don't play the song. You ain't dressed for it. Don't do it.
Right. You got to dress funky for that song, huh?
Yeah. But you guys know Prince's music, man. Every song is like a screenplay, Everything you could tell there were images that accompanied whatever he was talking about. And so I got it from that perspective, artistically,
Right.
Yeah,
It's very interesting. It's very interesting that you said screenplay, because one of the things about the Rainbow Children album, if you listen to it from beginning to end, it always
Yes.
reminds me of a play.
Right.
Even with
That's
the small interludes, you can just imagine it being reenacted on a stage. It's so precise with the story, and even the song sequence and everything. You can just actually see it in your head.
Yeah, that's very true. Everything is visual,
Yeah,
I mean, you can pick any song, Dorothy Parker. I mean,
yeah,
the whole imagery comes to your mind.
yeah, yeah.
And even on stage, he actually acts out the lyrics,
Yeah,
in some cases, with there might be the girl coming on stage dancing, or, in a certain kind of dress or whatever, So
yeah.
waitress outfit. I remember on
which
Jay.
is, yeah, right.
He had on the waitress outfit, and he's on the piano, and you was on the flute. Yeah, it's pretty dope.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes.
Big Rube, what are your favorite 3 tracks on the Rainbow Children?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot. I'm gonna say, well, number one, Muse to the Pharaoh.
Yeah, I love that one. I do too.
1+1+1 is 3.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I dig Digital Garden.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, a little different vibe, but I dig Digital Garden. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
gonna have to go back and re-listen to this. I haven't listened
Yeah.
to this stuff in years, man. I mean, I gotta,
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people I find out they don't really go back and listen to a lot of things that they've worked on in the past, because they played
exactly.
it, rehearsed it, or played it so much they kind of just move forward.
Yeah, I'm that way for sure.
Yeah.
Once I've done a record, I don't listen to it for long. I might hear it every now and then. I'm driving, I hear something come on the radio, or I'm in an airport and I hear it come through the speakers, stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You're walking, you're like, man, that sure sounds familiar. Who's that flute player, or who's that tenor player? And you're like, oh man, that's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
I totally dig it. Just as a filmmaker, 'cause I do a lot of edit. When I edit a lot, and when I'm looking at the same movie over and over
Yeah.
and over, by the time it comes out, I don't watch it
Yeah.
because
Sure.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah. Because you've lived it, you've
Yes.
lived it in and out, and
Yeah. Enough. What excites me is the next project, the next thing.
I'm exactly right. I always get this question, occasionally I get this question, what is your favorite album? And I always say, well, I don't really have one. I think it's the one I haven't recorded yet. I mean,
Yeah.
because your mind just, you've done that. It's already done. You're moving on,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Najee, what are your favorite albums by other artists? What would you
other
say?
artists,
Like
I'm
top
an old
3,
school guy, man. Huh?
yeah. I would just say like your top 3 favorite, maybe.
Ooh, I love Marvin Gaye's material, man. I just went back and really started listening to a lot of his stuff. Prince is definitely in the top 3 for me, because, I mean, every time I go back and listen to his stuff, it takes you back to an era, it takes you back to a time. It even takes me back to personal experience as a musician with him,
Yeah.
Let me see. This may sound a little corny, man, but I recently uncovered some of Minnie Riperton's stuff, and the years, Of course, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I love Earth, Wind, and Fire. The old albums. I mean, you can't. Huh?
Particular album, maybe, that you frequent
I
the
love
most?
them all, man. Spirit was one.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember the album Spirit. That's one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. The live albums are great. In the Stone, all that stuff, man. I mean,
yeah.
You don't have to hear them often, but when they come on, man, you're like, oh,
Yeah,
man.
and you just let it play.
And that's what it's about, man. It's about the song.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stevie is a perfect example.
Oh yeah.
I was fortunate to do with the late George Duke. He did my last album on Capitol Records, tribute to Stevie Wonder. We did that album in 93, 94, something like that.
Yeah, the Songs in the Key of Life, correct?
Yeah, Songs in the Key of Life. Yeah, we did that whole record. And, when you get deep inside of that stuff, man, it's just a lot going on. I mean, these guys, they're touched by God, I have to say.
Yeah. And George Duke doesn't really give the props that he deserved, man.
No, he does not. He does not.
He does not. I mean, he's a cold dude. One of my favorite joints from him, it was like No rhyme or no reason.
Oh,
Yes, that's right.
Times love.
Well,
oh,
you know, Jules and I toured for many years together, man. You might know, but we toured many years, and you know, I mean, I just got so many great stories with him. You know, I mean, he was such an inspiration, just a friend. You know,
yeah,
just a real friend. You know.
Yeah.
yeah. One of the baddest pianists out there, man.
Oh
God
my
bless
God.
him.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. You one of the baddest saxophone players ever, bro.
Oh man, well, listen, thank God. I appreciate you, man. You know, but you know, I always hold myself to another standard, so I appreciate hearing it. But you know, when I hear John Coltrane, I'm like, okay, all right, I got a lot more work to do here. You know, I listen to Michael Brecker, I'm like, okay.
Okay, is there any other like saxophone players out there that you like currently?
Currently, oh yeah, I mean Kirk Whalum. You know, I love Kirk. I love what Gerald Albright does. You know, they're one of my favorite, two of my favorite. I mean, we kind of peers in a sense. I think I was actually the first to come along. You know, and then they came. You know, they got signed. Gerald got signed in Atlantic. Kirk was with CBS, and then also Walter Beasley is one of my favorite. You know,
Oh yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, Mike
Yeah.
Phillips is pretty good too.
Mike Phil, oh yeah, Mike is great. You know, he
Yeah.
represents the next generation that came along after.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
He was
also Prince alumni.
yeah, he was also Prince alumni along with
Yeah.
playing with Stevie as well. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Mhm.
Would you like to give, our viewers, your social media where they can follow you?
Oh, sure. It's on Facebook. It's Najee the official page, and then on Twitter and Instagram is just Najee official. Najee, so very accessible. Yes, sir.
Awesome. One more question for you, Najee.
Yeah, sure. Mhm.
Is it any vocalists? Because we just saw like Eric and Badu and Jill Scott on the verses,
Yeah.
right? Two exceptional women. Is there
Yes.
any people out there that you haven't worked with that you would like to like be on one of your songs that you?
You know what? I would probably say, and I still call her boss, Shaka. You know, I would love to get her. You know, because every time I see her, we still call her boss. My brother and I both, because we both played in the band at the same time. You know, so, and every time I see her, I say, "Hey, boss lady." She's like, "That's right. I'm still your boss. That's right." You know, I think I would love to get her, man. Honestly, you know, I've been blessed to have so many guest vocalists that I could have never imagined on my records, from Will Downing to Jeffrey Osborne to, you know, most recently Eric Roberson, Kenny Lattimore, and many others. Vesta. You know, list is very long, but
Yeah.
she's one person that I have just not had the opportunity to do one with. You know, definitely.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Oh man, you got to make that happen, sir. Please.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, want to tell everybody about your coffee, tea, and conversation on this.
Ah,
Too, man.
well, you know, we just changed it to face with Najee as of yesterday.
Right,
We did a live Facebook thing with Kim Fields, you know, the actress Kim Fields, and we had the flautist Theo Renee, and we had a community person. We decided to kind of go diverse, so we had a community person named Shanithia Johns, who's written a book called "Girl Get Your Life," which is
right.
for women, but it's for men as well. So next week, I'm hoping to have some. Now that you mentioned George Duke, I think I'm gonna have some of my favorite keyboard players if they're available. Jeff Lorber, hopefully Alex Bunyong or somebody like that, or Barry Eastman. You know,
Yeah.
James Lloyd from Pieces of a Dream. You know, guys that he had direct contact with that influenced it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for letting everybody know that, because I got a chance to peek in on that yesterday.
yes, sir.
Yeah, want to let all of our followers and your followers on follow you at Najee Official, and check that out too, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. We really appreciate you.
Hey, I really appreciate the time, man. You know, anytime talk about my buddy Prince, you know, I appreciate you, honor, and listen. I don't have any bad stories, y'all out there. Just so you know, all that stuff they talking about out there about him being a drug. I never saw any of that. I never even saw the guy drink wine. So there you have it. You know,
Absolutely.
media doing what media does.
And as I mentioned, that's not the focus of the show. Our focus is to focus on the music.
Yes, sir.
People that played on the albums, contributed to the tours and things of that nature. So we definitely want to, we love the legacy, and we want to help preserve that to all the Purple family out there in the world. So we are honored, and we thank you very much for joining us. And just giving us
Thank
little
you.
tidbits about the. And pull this up here, the Rainbow Children.
Oh wow, man, you got the actual CD. That's nice.
Yeah.
Not only
Wow.
that, but I got my Najee here.
Oh, all right.
I got a few of them here.
Oh well, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
So,
Wow,
yeah.
you got man. You
Got
got
that
the real
Tokyo
throwback.
blue. You got that Tokyo blue too,
I
don't you?
got
Yeah.
Tokyo Blue.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank-
sir.
yeah.
Yeah,
Good
we
stuff,
love
man.
your music, man. We love your music, bro.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's truly been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, and we appreciate you for having
We'll
you,
be in
and
touch.
God bless you and your family during this
Yes.
quarantine time as well. We want you to stay safe, and we look
Yes, sir.
forward to talking to you again soon. We appreciate it.
I hope so. Thank you.
Okay.
Be
Thanks
well.
again, Najee.
Okay, brothers.
Once again, we'd like to thank legendary musician Najee for blessing us once again with his presence on the Purple Brothas.
Yes, absolutely, man. We thank you so much for being our first special guest in honor of Prince, as well as all of our subscribers and all the people viewing. Make sure you do like and subscribe on the channel. We're going to be coming at you real soon with more information and another good album as well. So we thank you so much for viewing. We will see you soon. Peace.
Purple Brothas, baby.
We out.